Today we get to look at 3 comparative myths. We're going to look at Loki, we're going to look at Hermes, and we're going to look at the Coyote. What these 3 share is they are considered trickster gods. But sometimes the trickster is useful. We have this negative connotation with trickster, and if you think about Loki and Marvel, you're going to get the wrong idea. Sometimes they are the ones that teach the hardest truth. That's what we're going to look at today. Every culture seems to do this tie-in, this balance between good and evil, between order and chaos, the sacred and the forbidden. But I swear the truth almost never seems to come from the obedient characters. It comes from the ones who break the rules. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they shapeshift, they mock the gods, but somehow, through inversion, which is a pretty cool storytelling tactic, even amidst their disobedience and their mischief, they expose the truths that everyone else is too afraid of, or too polite, or sometimes too blind to see themselves. In psychology, speaking just for Jung, he calls the trickster the collective shadow. I love that idea. It's clear because in mythology, the trickster illuminates the part of humanity that culture tries to hide. Philosophically speaking, it shows that truth often comes in sideways, not from above. So let's look at 3 quick examples here of times when truth was hiding behind the chaos. We'll start with Loki. Norse myth is obsessed with fate and doom. This is where we get the concept of Ragnarok, which again, we can thank Marvel for people's base understanding of. The gods of the Norse pantheon are always trying to control everything, trying to maintain a control over the world that maybe they know they actually can't, but it doesn't stop them from asserting their authority. Loki is our trickster god, the one that doesn't behave, that just won't fall in line. He's clever and mocking and chaotic and sometimes honest, only when honesty hurts the most. I think that in general, as we talk about these 3 tricksters and the truth that they can sometimes bring, the hard truth, we have to take it a bit with a grain of salt because they are known for being tricksters. Is this just a ploy for part of their grander plan or the chaos they want to bring to the world, or just sometimes, even by happenstance, because of their opposition against the authority that is coming down on them? They can often be tyrannical. Do they end up exposing something real, even if that's not their good intention to do so? So I want to make that clear. I'm not claiming that these are somehow 3 heroes of truth that are combating for the righteousness of man or anything like that. No, but in the storytelling techniques that these myths are utilized as, is it a way for us to, again, see that collective shadow, see something we maybe didn't want to address? A quote from the Prose Edda on how Loki is described: Loki is pleasing and handsome, but his nature is evil and he is capricious in nature. We go on to learn that Loki's trickery is never random. Some trickster gods are just about the chaos, but Loki is usually trying to expose something, usually something that the gods want to ignore. So the main part of the Loki myth we're looking at is the Balder myth. Balder is the most beloved of the gods, but he begins having dreams of his death. His mother, Frigg, makes every object in existence swear an oath not to harm him. What a cool thing. I'm almost upset that I'm just doing 3 little comparisons. I would love to go so deep into all of these, but makes every single object swear an oath to the gods not to harm her beloved. Every object does so except one, mistletoe, but she dismisses it. She says it seemed too young and harmless to demand an oath from. I love this in mythology. It's kind of like Achilles' heel. There's always one. We have to leave room. It's like even back then they understood the Superman effect. They couldn't actually make things perfect. But the innocence of mistletoe, the youth and naivety, surely we don't need that one to swear an oath. Of course, who is the one god who sees this? Loki. A tiny oversight that is enough to unravel everything. I talked about my concept of the 3-fold lens a few episodes ago, and question 2, the second lens or filter we should be looking at our lives through, was what thing am I not willing to look at or address or acknowledge? I think that's what this myth is about. And that if we leave that thing unattended, if we don't take it seriously, it can become our undoing. Loki is playing his necessary role in showing humanity that we can't ignore that thing, that we must be willing to look and acknowledge the things, even if they seem small and minuscule, that can be our undoing. So Loki shapes a dart out of mistletoe. He hands it to Baldur's blind brother, Hoter, and guides his hand, and Baldur dies instantly. It says, "So great was the sorrow that no one could speak." This was devastating. So I kind of covered it here, but what is the hard truth that Loki exposes in this myth? You are most vulnerable where you are most confident. The gods thought they created perfect safety. They ignored the thing that felt too small to matter. Loki exposes this truth that they didn't want to see. A single blind spot can truly destroy everything. So no, this, even though it's a trickster story, isn't about chaos. It's about denial, the dangers of denial. Loki shows that not knowing truth is dangerous, and ignoring truth can be fatal. Again, there's so much more to unpack there. There are so many layers. There's so much to the story about even this kind of being a tipping point for Ragnarok and all kinds of other amazing details. And I promise we will revisit it, but let's move straight on to our second example, going to the Greek myths now. And let's talk about Hermes, someone that doesn't get enough credit, even by myself. I love talking about Prometheus and Sisyphus and Icarus and Narcissus and all the other ises. But Hermes, usually known as the messenger god, has quite the tale. So in Greek myths, a lot of the gods do represent order. Think Apollo, Zeus, Athena. But Hermes is an exception, someone flying between all the hard lines. Hermes is the god of boundaries, of transitions, of commerce and theft, and of travel. He moves between worlds. He is the original boundary crosser. So our particular myth that we're looking at today is the Homeric hymn to Hermes. Hermes is born at dawn. By noon, he has used a tortoise shell to create his lyre. Even later that day, he sneaks out to steal 50 of Apollo's cattle. He reverses their hooves so that he can mask the tracks. He hides them, he sacrifices 2 of them, and then returns to his cradle, pretending to be innocent. Talk about the definition of a trickster god. Apollo, of course, confronts him. Hermes denies everything, even going as far as to swear a false oath. Not something to be taken lightly. Finally, he plays his new instrument, though. The first music ever heard. Apollo is stunned. The quote is that Apollo laughed and his anger fled. And instead of punishing Hermes, he offers a trade. His cattle for the instrument. And by way of offering the cattle, it's also offering forgiveness. They're yours. You did me no wrong. That moment creates 2 distinct domains. You have Apollo with order, now music, rationality. Hermes, on the other hand, has invention, trickery, and boundaries. I think there's a big theme here that I would want you to pick up on, and it has to do with the invention of music, but the invention of music only happens, or we should say, let's just replace that with creativity only happens when you're willing to step out of bounds, at least its origin. And that makes sense, right? If you have a world of perfect order and rule and law and consistency, where in that is room for creativity? By definition, creativity is when you twist or turn outside of those fine lines. The hard truth that I think Hermes is showing here in this myth is that creativity has to begin almost as a transgression, that we have to accept that things will be broken to make new things, that sacrifices of the ordinary, again, using the tortoise shell outside of its original purpose, will have to be traded to make new purposes. You can't invent the lyre by obeying. You can't innovate if you're shackled to tradition. You can't change the world if you stay inside the lines. I think we see this with so many greats, so many inventors throughout human history. Hermes seems to represent that kind of mind that sees the ordinary, the status quo, the rule, not as a command, but more of a puzzle, more of something to work around. In science, we can see this example with Galileo or Darwin or Hypatia, all punished for questioning the lines. In philosophy, Socrates breaks the Athenian norms and is killed for it. Even in Christianity, Jesus plays this part. He is breaking Torah law. He is breaking the Sabbath. He is looking at the heart of the issue, not the rule, the letter of the law. Hermes shows that culture only advances when someone is willing to flip or even break the script. But let's move on to our third example, the Native American example of the Coyote. By the way, I just have to plug this book. I love it so much. It made the Coyote one of my favorite animals. And it covers a lot of the lore and legend about this animal as well. And it feels unfair to say Native American myths without mentioning a specific tribe, but there are dozens of tribes that happen to have the coyote as this same kind of character. The Navajo, the Salish, the Nez Perce, most of the Plains tribes. And to them, he is both brilliant and absurd, hero and fool, creator and destroyer. Coyote is the most human of all the tricksters. Now, there's 2 coyote stories that I love, and I wasn't sure which to share with you. You have Coyote Stealing Fire, our Promethean version within Native American storytelling, or the Coyote and the Rolling Rock. Maybe I'll just give you a 1-minute version of each so that we can reference them here. There is a fire people who greedily guard fire for themselves. Coyote pretends to be harmless. He approaches slowly, and then he seizes the burning stick and runs. The fire people chase him. They even burn him, injure him, nearly kill him. But as he runs and as he takes this infliction, he passes the torch to another animal after another animal after another animal, sharing fire until humanity finally receives fire. The quote from the Salish tradition of this story is that Coyote gave himself to the flames so that the people might live. And quickly, the story of the Coyote and the Rolling Rock, which might look similar to a certain cartoon you're familiar with, is the Coyote boasts that he can outrun a giant boulder. He's put to the test, and the boulder crushes him. But he resurrects, and he challenges the boulder again, and it crushes him again and again, until finally he realizes the rock always wins. The way that the native people told it was to understand the unison, the relationship between wisdom and foolishness. Wisdom is not the opposite of foolishness. Wisdom includes foolishness. Wisdom often comes from foolishness. This is the hard truth of the Coyote. Humans learn the hard way, that we repeat mistakes, that we grow through failure and embarrassment and stubbornness. And it's unique, it's different in a way, right? When we look at that story of Hermes, we see clever innovation. Coyote is teaching humility. We have a very similar idea in Buddhism: fall down 7 times, get up 8. Going back to the Greek, Seneca says a very stoic idea: the one who has made a mistake and doesn't correct it is making another. So Coyote is reminding us, showing us that part that humanity probably doesn't want to look at, our own stubbornness and sometimes downright uselessness, or what seems like that, until and only if we can learn from it. That human progress is trial and error, accident and persistence. And man, if that just isn't so very true. Loki exposes our blind spots. Hermes exposes our stagnant rules and what gets in the way of innovation and creation. And Coyote exposes our arrogant beliefs when we think we are better than our mistakes and not products of our mistakes. And I think it's cool to look at these 3 because across entire continents, across completely, totally separate cultures, these 3 characters converge into one powerful truth. Humanity grows through disruption. Truth hides mostly where we are afraid to look, and the characters we fear or mock might be the very ones holding the mirror we don't want to look into. The trickster's role was never to comfort us, maybe just to expose us or to wake us up. This is the fire I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much for being here. I will be back with Wednesday and Saturday episodes, and until then, keep sharing. Our Blaze tier gets a verbal call out at the end of each video, so a very special thanks to Decox, Dark Side of Delight Productions, James Geider, Laurie, and Noëldivergent. Also, our Flame tier is up to 7 people. Your support here truly means so much. All other donors are Ember Tier and are listed in the description of each video. Thank you to each and every single one of you.